A brilliant conversationalist. She could talk for Ghana, but about useful things only. She happens to love life, she loves her food, and she loves everything fashion. My conversation with her highlights how to effectively identify emotional triggers, how to deal with them, and perhaps put them in their place. It was a privilege speaking with Miss Vanessa Awanyo.
Hi, so my name is Vanessa Awanyo. I'm currently a candidate. I'm trying to pursue my PhD, so yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm the only child, so I'm pretty spoiled, I'd like to believe. So yeah, I think that's the only thing I'd like to. Top two things that I love to eat out. So I love to hang out with friends, go out, eat out. That's one of my favorite things. And another thing is I love to travel. So yeah. So I'm very mindful about my emotional health. I'm still trying to improve on how to maybe deal with my emotions and stuff, but I would say as of now I'm pretty mindful about my emotional health. When to like stop, reflect, and yeah. So okay, so in 2015 I was done with my master's, and I think I just had so many expectations that once I'm done with, I'm young, I finished my master's pretty early, so once I'm done with my master's I'm going to get my dream job with the UN just immediately, and it didn't happen that way. Nobody had prepared me for the fact that sometimes you can be done with your education and not get a job right away. So I think that's what triggered everything for me. I got to a point where I don't know whether to call it, I don't know the definition of depression. I don't know the definition of that, but I really got to a very low point. I got super, I'd say what it was anxiety more than anything. And yeah, so me not getting a job immediately and having so much expectations of just, you know, I just wanted to be a career woman. So me not getting a job immediately made me start to feel like, am I enough? Like, am I worth anything? So that's when I started to realize that something was a bit off. So I had to start, you know, paying attention to why am I feeling this way and what is really causing me to, you know, feel this way. Because I realized I wasn't the only person who graduated and didn't get a job immediately. So I was like, okay, how can I deal with this till I get to the point where I get a job? So that's when I started, you know, taking a seat and just trying to, you know, figure out what's going on in my mind. Yeah. Okay, so I would say emotional triggers are when, I don't just want to put it on people. I would say when a person's behavior or actions, or not just a person, when events happen that make you feel a certain way, and the connotation is normally towards negative feelings. So when a person's behavior or something happens that makes you feel sad, maybe angry, maybe rejected, that kind of thing, I think that's what an emotional trigger is. And it might not necessarily be, you might not be getting triggered just from, I mean, that event is not necessarily the problem, but it's what makes you realize, the way you react to that problem is what makes you realize that there might be something deeper going on. So yeah, I think they show up when, for me, for instance, I would say anger. Like, I just realized I can just be getting angry at the least thing. And then after I get angry, I just sit down and say, wait, I'm angry, but this thing I'm angry at is really not the reason, or this person I'm angry at, what they did was nothing really that big. So that's when I always say that I have to like catch myself, sit back and try and find out what's happening. But I think for me, the biggest, I would say, symptom for me would be anger. I just get angry. Wow. Emotional triggers, if you don't learn to, I don't know if you can master them, but you need to be aware. If you are not mindful of your emotional triggers, you are going to be screwed. because you are going to be acting based on those emotions. And I have this amazing friend who told me once that you shouldn't act on your emotions. More than anything, you should have like your mind over matter, because emotions will always, they hardly ever bring you the best results you want. So yeah, that's what okay, so I mentioned anger, but this is what I'll say. You know, there are different kinds of, you can be angry. I am not the kind of person who gets angry and throws things around, and when I get angry I just fall back. Like I'll be very calm. I'm not going to be jumping and insulting anyone. I don't do that. I'll just fall back. And for me, that falling back, the anger is, you know what, the anger more than anything, I think, is incited by the feeling of, wait, am I not good enough? Like, don't you think I'm good enough? I'll give you an experience. So I remember I was doing something and I wasn't doing it consistently, and somebody like made me aware of the fact that, wait, today you said you were going to do this but you didn't do it, so like why, you know that. And I realized that I just got very defensive. Me getting defensive and me maybe acting out wasn't necessarily because of what she was talking about, but I realized when I sat back and I thought about it, I realized that it had to do with deep, like some feelings deep down inside of sometimes thinking that, am I good, like questioning whether I'm good enough. Like this goes back to maybe when I was a child, like growing up. At 15, I left Ghana. I went to a boarding school. I was there with different kinds of other kids and all of that. And sometimes you, like with experiences like that, when you don't necessarily have your parents around and you're just a child trying to navigate your life at 15, which will be very difficult, you don't really have people telling you that even if you don't get this right, it's fine. That doesn't define you. You're going to make mistakes. That does not make you who you are. You start to judge yourself based off of maybe mistakes, what you have or don't have. You start to, as a I believe most children or teenagers will go through this at some point, where you start to question yourself and ask, am I good enough? That kind of thing. And then you might have peers that may also maybe, you know, we are all teens, all growing up. They also have no idea what they are talking about, but maybe your peers can say certain things, your professors, just things happening outside of you that might make you start questioning yourself. So I believe it's just a combination of those different things that made me get to a point where I was really questioning whether I was good enough. But nowadays I'm trying to just, you know, master it. And definitely that feeling of inadequacy, I think that has been a thing that has always rung in my head. Like, am I enough? Am I enough? And then sometimes I talk to my dad or mom or somebody who keeps on reminding me. But you know, when as a child you've grown, like you've almost been by yourself and you've had to navigate through that yourself, it's a bit difficult. So I wouldn't say, I don't know if there was sadness involved. Maybe there should have been, but I don't necessarily remember being sad. I just remember, just as I said, for me, my anger showed me withdrawing myself. So if somebody comes and in a way I feel triggered, I just step back. But I realized that I was stepping back way too much. You can't be stepping back. People are going to trigger you, whether consciously or unconsciously. And I just realized I can't just always be like, I'm done, I don't want enough of this. So I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm here. We're going to figure this out. I'm going to sort this out, because you can't live your life just, I was telling myself that, I don't know, for some other people it might manifest in different ways, but for me, I realized I was just keeping away from so many people. I'm like, okay, you are the common denominator, so you need to figure out how to. So in terms of the physical aspect, I've always been a thin person, but I've realized that my weight was fluctuating. I would say between 2015 and 2019, my weight was really fluctuating. I was told my hormones were imbalanced and all of that. So those were some of the things that I started seeing were a problem. I didn't know. I never really associated the two. I just thought, what is happening to me? Why am I getting sick? You know, why am I always at the hospital or something? And then I realized that, oh, okay, so maybe what's going on in my mind or what's going on inside is manifesting outwardly. So yeah. So I would say, because when I was younger, I wasn't here. I don't even know. The only people I could maybe really talk to when I was there would be my friends, because it was a boarding school. That's where you are. And I also, being in like a multicultural, an international school, I don't know if I was that comfortable being able to talk to people who didn't, maybe who were older but didn't really look like me. And I would say when I was younger, I didn't know what I know now, that you need to talk about your feelings. And I think I really got that from, because obviously I grew, before I turned 15, I grew up here. And there's a thing about the African culture, I'll just bring it to Ghana, since I'm from Ghana, where you don't really talk about your feelings. I just realized maybe that's where it came from. When something is happening, you don't really talk about your feelings. I've grown up being the happy-go-lucky person. So I always never wanted to also be that person who's going to be like, oh, I'm not feeling this way, I'm feeling sad. No, because I've always been the one who is being silly at home, you know, making people laugh and all of that. So you also don't want to give your family, aside the fact that you don't really hear people talking about their problems too much, you also don't want to be the one who is going to, you know, make people too concerned. And I mentioned this because I'm also the only child. There was always a little bit of pressure on me. I'm like, I'm the only child, like my parents just, you know, really love me. I don't want them to feel like I'm sad. I didn't want to put that pressure also on my parents. So imagine being that young and then just having all these emotions and things that you are trying to figure out by yourself. It never works. But as I said, everything just started manifesting really between 2015 and maybe 2019. And within that time, I just told myself, if I have a problem, I need to find somebody. I don't even need to care whether they are going to judge. Sometimes they might not even understand. But I need to sometimes, you know, just let it out, you know, say what I feel, and then and hopefully the person will be able to tell me something to help. But even if they don't, at least I've, you know, released it out of my system. Yeah. My most important coping tool. Just get over it. You'll be fine. You know, I think generally, I would say this. I think I just naturally have the gift of, I don't like being in the down place for a very long time. So naturally, every time I feel like, at least in the past, every time I felt like I was triggered or something, I just, no, this is not happening. This is not happening. I'm a very happy person. I'm going to find something to do. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out with my friends. I'm going to call somebody, and I'm going to forget this thing. That's how I always dealt with stuff. But in the past few years, I've just told myself, sometimes, you know what, you just need to like sit. Now I sit like I'm here. I'm not running away. How are you feeling, Vanessa? What's going on? I just like to sit down and think. Some people will call it meditation. I just like to, you know, just be calm with myself instead of just running away from stuff. Just sit with myself, and then it makes things easier. You're able to, you know, compartmentalize things, and yeah. Yeah, you know, luckily I have a lot of people I can talk to. But just because you have a lot of people you can talk to doesn't always mean you'll be comfortable talking to them about it. Because sometimes they may not, as much as they love you, when you're going through something, sometimes you're the only one who gets what you're going through. you really are the only one who can. I remember talking, as I said, I have a lot of people I can talk to. I remember talking to maybe my dad. He'd be like, "You're fine." He'd pop my head this way. "You're fine. You're fine. You're good. You're good. Don't worry." And I'm like, "That's exciting, but like, you don't understand what I'm feeling." I remember talking to someone from church. They said, "I'll pray for you. You'll be fine." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but you really don't know what I'm going through." So it's tricky. You can have people around you, but that doesn't always mean they will really understand.
Vanessa, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I know that it couldn't have been easy to do, and I feel privileged to have heard about things that have happened to you. And that being said, I know that so many of our viewers will identify with some of your experiences, and that would be really good learning for them. Now, just out of curiosity, with everything that you've learned now, what would you tell your younger self, about dealing with emotional triggers, what they mean, and how to handle them gracefully, if you will?
I think what I'll tell my younger self is definitely to speak up more.
Right.
Definitely don't try to put up this facade. I wouldn't just, when you're a kid, mostly, like maybe before you become a teen, you're just yourself and all of that. But I think once you get into your teens and as you're getting older, I don't know if it's society trains you in a way or conditions you in a way where you like to be perceived a certain way by people. So maybe exactly. So maybe that's why I kept quiet, because I didn't want people to see me in a different light than the happy, always cheery person I've been. But I'll definitely say speak up. And then I don't know if you can do that as a child, but you live and you learn. Now that I'm a bit older, I would say, actually maybe you can actually do that when you're young too. You can sit down. Just sit down and say, okay, what is happening right now? Why am I angry? Why am I sad? Why did I get triggered by this thing? Maybe, I think sometimes we are taught that you have to grow up to a certain point before you are able to process certain thoughts. I don't know why, but if kids at 4 or 5 are learning about the continents in the world, they can be taught how to meditate, how to sit with your emotions, try to figure out how to just be centered, instead of just letting your emotions just take over till you get to a point where you're much older and then you're losing relationships, things are just just all going haywire. So maybe those two things: speak up, and kids maybe should be taught how to meditate, we are just taught how to and keep going. And especially, I would say this, especially during this period with Corona and all of that, if anything, if people have learned anything from this whole experience, maybe it's the fact that sometimes you just need to stop everything, sit down with yourself and then see what's going on. Just analyze what's going on. Okay. So those would be the two things. Yeah.
That's excellent. So to summarize, you would encourage teaching children to learn about stillness at some point in their life.
Yeah.
And also showing up as you are.
Yeah.
And that would probably take us into the conversation about vulnerability. Just showing up,
not being afraid.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you can. The thing is, when you show who you really are on the inside, there are 2 ways it could go. In fact, there may be 3. You get the response you might want.
Right.
You be ignored, or people will just misunderstand you. Why?
Absolutely.
But you have to. I think the thing is, you have to be brave. If I'm sad, I'm sad.
Take courage.
If I'm feeling depressed. I still have to look at the real definition of depressed. If I'm feeling anxious, sometimes we don't even know what is wrong with us because we don't talk about these things.
Right.
So how will a teenager, like I'm surrounded by a couple of teenagers, so I know this, and I'm glad because I'm seeing them speak up and stuff. But for those who don't have people around their age or a bit older to talk to, how do they know that if I'm going through this phase, wait, I'm not the only one who has been through this phase. So how can I talk to somebody to help them let me, like, decipher what I'm really going on? There are a lot of kids out there confused. They don't know what is going on. All they know is that I just have to keep quiet because maybe nobody cares, or even if they do, they might not understand me. So you feel alone, and then you are trapped, because once you start to feel like you're alone in this, you start to isolate yourself. You start to feel like a victim and all of that. You get it? Yeah. So there should be more openness. And another thing, actually, the guardians, like, not just guardians, whoever you are, the people you are surrounded by, make sure, who are your friends, who are your family, like the people you love, make sure you're attentive to them. Okay. Because not everyone, I am not somebody who is quiet. I'm not sure anyone would describe me as quiet. But I still kept certain things to myself. So imagine the people who are very much introverts. Right. What's also going to happen to them? So whether it's from parents, guardians, siblings, like, pay attention. Like, if you see that this person is, sometimes it looks like they're overreacting about something, ask them, like, quietly, like, people don't like asking people about their feelings, about, do you understand? And that's the problem. Because now people might start to feel like they are being neglected. Do you understand? We're all in the same house, but you have no idea what I'm going to, because you have not bothered to ask. I may be showing these different symptoms, but it's just like, oh, why is she just, and then you leave it. You just brush it under the rug and all of that. Yeah, so another thing, people around should be attentive. And sometimes just check, even your strong friends. I think I've seen this on social media. Even your strong friends. The friends who are always laughing, always happy. Like, hey, what's up? Because you notice if you pay attention. And then you ask, and then they will feel like maybe they can be vulnerable with you, and then just,
you can make some headway. That's so important. That's really good learning for us now as adults. For what we didn't get, we know that we can be mindful and intentional about giving that to our children, so that we break the mold. Another area of curiosity, what is your most important coping tool today?
My most important coping tool? Within the past 4 years, it's very interesting, because as things just began to just manifest, like all those feelings maybe I had kept in, as they began to manifest, I had also just started to get more and more spiritual. So I would say the number one coping tool for me now is just being in tune with God. I'm not talking about going to church, because I've always gone to church. But there's a difference between me going to church now, or me as a Christian, Vanessa as a Christian in her late 20s, compared to Vanessa as a Christian in her early 20s and when I was younger. Now I feel like, because I've gotten to the place where I know that I have to be still, and sometimes things can get overwhelming, I need something a bit bigger than me. Do you understand? So for me, anyone in my house, I tell them, please, when they come to my room, I'm like, I'm not awake. I can be awake, but I'm like, they understand it when I say I'm not awake, because I may be awake now, but I'm now going to sit down. Even if it's for 10 minutes, even if it's for 15 minutes, just sit down. If it's praying, if it's meditating, just sit with yourself. Stop running away from yourself. Just half of us have like so many friends, but we're not friends with ourselves. It's like you're running away from yourself, but you want to be friends with other people. Do you understand? So it's a thing for me now. When I wake up, I need to have that quiet time. Where's me praying with God and being so vulnerable? I don't know if everybody who is watching would be a Christian. I won't like to assume that. But for me, that is what works for me. It just does something to my day. Do you understand? Do you understand me? It just gives me it's like a breath of fresh air, some positive energy, good vibes. You know, and the days I miss it, I can tell the difference. I'm easily triggered. I'm easily triggered on the days I miss it.
We are creatures of habit after all, even if you think of it in that way.
So it's a thing. It's like if I'm going to have breakfast, and if breakfast is a requirement for a person in the morning, well, my meditation. I have a little niece. I tell her, please,
this is not time. It's not your slot.
She even knows it. She's like, are you awake? I'm like, no, I'm not awake. Then she knows exactly what. She's like, oh, yeah, praying, okay. Then she goes. Have that me time. Don't run away from that me time. Know yourself, your weaknesses, your faults, everything. It's when you get to sit down and try to know those things about you that you'll be able to embrace. So now, if I know what my weaknesses are, things that trigger me, I'm less likely to react as opposed to respond when something is happening. Do you understand? So every day I have to just get myself prepped, and it's a necessity for me, and that works. And it's, trust me, drastically changed my life. I would have just been there reacting. And I'm not saying I've stopped reacting, because I'm probably going to have to be working on myself till my last day. I believe that we are all growing. But there's some work you can do on yourself that will make you enjoy life much more. You have much more peace, much more joy, even when things, you see, this is the thing. When things are not going well, if you're at the point where you've not sat with yourself, you're not in tune with like all these emotional triggers and not accepting life for what it can be, sometimes you'll be overwhelmed. But when you are aware, awareness is key. When you're aware that life is not always going to go the way I want it to, but once I'm like centered and know that everything, no matter what, works out for my good, and once I'm able to take responsibility for my actions and what I am, things are much better, much better. So yeah,
you raised two really important things for me, or two things that speak to me very much or very often. First one is awareness. Like I mentioned, when you're aware, being aware is a great place to be. It informs your decisions really differently and very often in a very positive way. So awareness is a good thing. Second thing is that the relationship that you have with yourself is the most important. So talking about the fact that most of us have been conditioned to fill our time with friends, and don't get me wrong, friends are great,
amazing,
you know, they have what they bring, but until you have that meaningful relationship with yourself, probably every other relationship you have might be a farce, because then you're not able to again show up as you really are. You bring a version of yourself that you think is your real version, but there are parts of you that you haven't dealt with, and you're not able to present that properly. These are very important points, and I'm so happy that you bring them up. Vanessa, what made you decide to participate in this program? And I say this because I know that it's a bit sensitive, sharing the deepest parts of not everybody would be comfortable.
Honestly, I've just gotten to a place where like I'm getting there, like I don't care. I really do not care. Because the most important thing for me right now, to have what makes me happy, what gives me peace, what gives me joy. I prefer those three things to. I mean, I want wealth and all the good stuff. I want to be able to travel and all of that. But those things are important to me. Like I'd like love to as well. But I have now come to the point where I realize these are the things that are important. Like how you are feeling on the inside is the most important thing. It's going to be the hardest thing you ever do. Coming face to face with who you are. Your weaknesses, your struggles is the hardest thing you will ever have to do and accept about yourself. But once you start doing the work, you realize that even though it's the hardest, it's the most important because it gives you the most freedom. And I want to be walking around here.
Freedom is good.
Being free. Like a lot of us are walking, like smiling. But you have no idea. I want you to see me when I'm smiling because on the inside it's actually genuine. I don't care. And I've told, like, you know, that I also with the teens and stuff. You need to know it at that young. You need to know it when you're younger. You need to know. People, and especially in this part of the world, people think life starts at 40. No, I want my life to start when it started. Do you understand? I don't want to wait till I'm old, till I've had all my kids, till, you know, the normal things that we go through.
Of course.
I don't want that. I want to enjoy life literally to the fullest in my young age, in my middle ages, in my old age. I don't want to now be gray-haired and now saying, only if I did the work, then I would have been so much happier. No, I want to make so many amazing memories. And what that would take is doing the work now. Sometimes people think in your 20s, in the teens, that's when you should play around, like, you know, have the most fun. YOLO, I don't know if people still say that. But hopefully they do, and you're not and not too aged. But yeah, this is the time actually for us to like experiment, make the mistakes, but this is the time to find yourself. I don't find yourself at 40. Don't wait and be miserable. I think maybe people have like different times when they have like that epiphany. I'm lucky for me that mine started maybe in my mid-20s. So I can only imagine the kind of woman I'm going to be in my 30s, in my 40s, in my 50s. If right now I am just so aware of who I am and like just trying to, just embracing day by day, just embracing all that Vanessa is. Do you understand? So Wow,
Vanessa, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. The patience, the honesty, the enthusiasm to talk about your experiences. I really appreciate that, and it's a very valuable thing that you've done. And I can't say thank you enough.
Thank you too, Baba. And I think what you're doing is very important. It's very important. It might be a bit tricky for some people to understand it, but there are people like you who need to literally push down that wall, and the rest will start flooding. Like, we need to start talking about these things. Do you understand? They're the most important things. So thank you too. Thank you too for all this stuff.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. It's been a successful episode. Vanessa has been great. It's been insightful listening to her, and I'm sure that you have either identified with some part of her life or have had an opportunity to learn something that will be useful to you. I look forward to the next episode, and I'm sure that you'd like to join me. My name is Baba Dadzi, and you've been listening to Hearts and Minds Aloud.